Now before we delve any deeper into SQL injection, it is important for you to get an idea as to how HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol works. An HTTP client sends a request using a transmission control protocol connection to a port or on a remote host. An HTTP server connected to that port waits to receive the client's message before it acts, wherein the server sends back a status line. The status line could be the requested file, an error message, or some other information. A common example of a status line is http:/1.0/404 not found, which is usually displayed to the user when they are trying to access a non-existing resource on the web application. The HTTP server then closes the connection. It is known as stateless protocol since it does not keep track of the state of the connection between the client and the server. Now HTTP requests are made using certain methods which do the underlying work of sending and receiving data, and the methods are get, head, post, put, delete, options, connect, and trace. Get method is used to request a representation of the specified resource, while head method is similar to get but without the response body. Post method submits the user data to the identified resource. Put method uploads a representation of the specified resource, and delete lets the request delete the specified resource. Option method returns the HTTP method that the server supports, while connect method is for use with a proxy that can change to being an SSL tunnel, and trace method echoes back the received request so that a client can see what intermediate servers are adding or changing in the request. Now let us get into an introduction of SQL and databases. This slide shows an example of data in a relational database. A relational database system contains one or more objects called tables. The data or information for the database is stored in these tables. Tables are uniquely identified by their names and are comprised of columns and rows. Column contain the column name, data type, and any other attributes for the column. Rows contain the records or data for the columns. Here is a sample table called users. This is a user-defined table that could be used for validating and managing application users. In this table, the first row called user ID is specified as an integer. By being defined as an integer column, the only type of data that can be stored in that column are numeric integers. User ID is also the primary key for the table. A table usually has a column or combination of columns whose values uniquely identify each row in the table. This column is called the primary key of the table and enforces the entity integrity of the table. There can be no duplicate values. The other four columns are varchar, that is variable character data. Any kind of strings can be stored in these columns. Character data consists of any combination of letters, symbols, and numeric characters. To note, the password field is not encrypted. This should be implemented at an application level. These passwords are not directly linked or related to the SQL database passwords or the operating system passwords. Now we shall look into some basic SQL commands that may help to understand how transactions take place and how data is managed in the database. The queries in this slide include several variations of the select and insert statement. For retrieving information from the database, the first query is used, which involves specifying the table name where the information is kept. The where connective is used to add extra conditions in order to extract the selected information. The insert statement involves adding data into the tables in the database. In this slide, we shall see a few more SQL statements such as update and select, which involve specific operations in a database. For updating rows, you have to use an update statement with the column name and value and with certain conditions joined by the where clause. Two tables are joined by comparing specific attributes in both tables. And on top of that, SQL has inbuilt functions for certain operations, such as the count function, which finds out the number of rows in a table. Here are some other commands that are shown for several other operations. For deleting rows, the delete statement is used with conditions by the where clause and the table name. The conditions can also be modified to include specific values, which could sort out the data in a better way. Some other queries will illustrate how specific tasks are performed in the database. For specifying a pattern and querying data which matches it, the condition that should be specified here is as alike %c underscore t percentage, where c underscore t denotes the pattern which is to be searched. Some keywords such as null can also be used as values in the conditions in where clause to query relevant data. Apart from this, metadata tables store information about the database. They are highly vendor specific and are denoted by reserved table names. In this slide, we shall see some basic examples on how the application sets up the SQL query in order to get the data from the client end, structure it properly and send it to the database for information retrieval. The first example shows how login function in a web application is achieved by getting the username and password from the user.